Hello, it's Thursday, and today I'm going to be using this t-shirt yarn. I really loved the idea of it. Basically, it's made from recycled fabric, and it's kind of like this thicker cord than what I'm used to using. And so I got a couple of balls of it with the idea that I was going to make a bag, and then I put it on a shelf, and it sat there for over a year. But today, all of that ends, and I'm making something with this yarn. It recommends using a 10mm hook, which I do have one. It's not my favorite hook to use because it's like nasty plastic and I prefer to use like metal hooks, but we're going to try with this one here, and I'm actually going to like do something really unusual for me, and I'm going to start by making a little swatch. I want to see how big it works up. I want to see kind of what the texture of it is. I want to see how close knit it is when using the recommended hook size. So yeah, we're going to start by making a little swatch, I think. Plus, I mean, like, look at that center pull, just lovely. So there is 3 rows of single crochet. So it's got a little bit of stretch to it, but not too much. I was a little bit afraid that it would be like very stretchy, and it was to start with, but the more I stitched, the sort of the firmer it got. It works up with quite a few gaps in between, which wouldn't be bad for like, I guess, certain kinds of market totes and that sort of thing, but not necessarily ideal for a backpack. I'd probably have to line it if I went down that route, but it might be okay for like a bucket bag. I do just want to try a couple of different kinds of stitches and then just sort of see how I feel about those as well. So this is kind of like the experimentation angle of it, where I need to work out what kind of tools I actually have at my disposal. And yes, I know that there are lots of bag patterns out there and I probably could have just Googled it, but like, where's the fun in that? So there we go. So I've got my row of double crochet there that I've tried. Then I've got a couple of puff stitches that I tried, which look very, very messy, but that just might be me. They look a little bit nicer on the front, probably because I had a little bit more control of them. And then I tried a couple of double crochet clusters as well, just to add a little bit of texture there. So I have some options there to work with. I think that the single crochets are definitely sturdier, and so I'll be using them for any like foundational areas of the bag, like any kind of base. But I think the double crochets will be fine for working up the sides. I don't know if I like the puffs or the clusters, really. It's got a really nice squishy feel to it. So yeah, I'm gonna frog this at this point. And I also just want to say that it frogs really smoothly. So not bad if you are looking for a yarn to like experiment with, or potentially for like maybe kids to learn how to crochet with. It seems to be fairly friendly. I do just want to say though, this hook is still literal hell to work with. Like, not kidding. Hurts my hands already, and I've only done like this much of it, so it's just gonna be one of those days, I think. Okay, so now that we've done that little bit of experimentation, I'm going to get my sketchbook out and I'm going to draw up a little bit of a plan of how I want to proceed from here. So I knew straight away that I wanted to make a bag with it, and it actually recommends it on the label. It says perfect for like bags and home decor, but then I kind of got like creatively blocked by too many options, and I got stuck somewhere between tote and bucket and like backpack, and I just couldn't really make up my mind what to do with it. So that's kind of the 3 options that I'm thinking of at the moment. So the square tote is obviously going to be the easiest because it's basically 2 square panels with just 1 strap. So that just feels like a nice, easy approach for someone who's never done this before. I was thinking kind of a little backpack, but then also I don't really use backpacks, so it's not going to be super functional for me. And also I think that the straps, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find a way to make them super not stretchy, so that'd drive me nuts, particularly as they won't be adjustable because I just don't have the skills to try and pull something like that off. Yeah, so I'm kind of leaning towards kind of a little bucket bag with a bit of a drawstring on top and just the one strap, but it can be cross body and big enough just to fit like a wallet and a phone, you know? I feel like that's kind of functional for me anyway. And I also think that like I'll put a little bit of cardboard in the base. It should just be able to work up as like one giant cup. So I feel like if I can do some of the shapes that I've done previously, I should be able to work out how to do a giant cup. Also, I've done like a checkerboard thing on this. I don't know if I'm gonna actually do that, but yeah, I think I'm gonna go for this one here, but this will be my backup if this just doesn't work for me. Yeah. Okay, so I've roughed out some of the steps I think I'm going to follow in order to try and make this bag. So step one, I'm going to crochet up just sort of like the base round that I want to build up. So I want that to be the widest point of the bag. I'm just going to work it up in one big continuous spiral. And I'm going to use single crochet just because I feel like that was the sort of stiffest stitch that I had available to me. Then in step two, I have some spare cardboard that I want to use to like reinforce the base of the bag. So I'm going to cut a round that is slightly smaller than the base and just sort of have that lined up ready to go. I'm then going to sort of work around the base to sort of make it into a cylinder. I may or may not keep the checkered pattern. I might go back to just regular stripes because I like stripes, but we'll see. In any case, I'm going to be building up sort of the sides of the bag there. So up until sort of the tallest point I want it to be. And then I'm going to put an extra rim of navy blue around the top. In step four, I'm going to make the drawstring because I don't think I want to just use the yarn in its base form just because it does have a little bit of stretch to it. So I might just even just plait it or something like that to create the drawstring for around the top. In step five, I'll fold that little extra lip over and sew it down or stitch it down. Step six, I'll thread that drawstring through and just make sure that like that works. And if all of that magically goes to plan somehow, I will then find a way to make this crossbody strap. I might go looking up some like macrame techniques or something like that if I can't get what I want out of crochet, and make and attach the back strap. So I've kind of got a plan for how I want to try and approach this. So I'm going to start by like making this sort of bag base. So one thing that I immediately noticed is that the navy blue was stretchier than the grey, and it does say on the label that all colours are going to be a little bit different because it depends on where the fabric has come from. So I probably should have swatched with both the navy and the grey before I got started. And the other thing that I've had to do straight away is swap to a smaller hook after that starting magic ring because I just could not get the hook through the loops of the stitch. And this is already like really tiring on the hands. So not a project that I'm gonna like do a lot of, but that color is just coming up beautifully. And I feel like it'll all get easier once I'm using double crochet instead of single, but I just really want this base to have a little bit more structure to it. Okay, so there's the base of my piece, and it has turned out a little bit larger than I thought it would, but that's because I'm going to try and do these checks, which means that I had to like sort of make them evenly divisible by a number, and 3 felt wrong when it came to squares, and I had to go for 4. So I have built it up to 48 stitches around, so it might just be a little bit bigger than the original vision, but I think that's also fine. I will also say that it worked up a lot sort of stiffer than I thought it would, which is a good thing in this case, because it means that I'm going to skip the layer of cardboard and go straight onto sort of working up these squares, which I'm going to do 4 stitches each, and I'm going to do double crochet, so there'll be sort of 2 rows by 4 stitches along for each square. So yeah, we're basically going to skip that cardboard reinforcement and just move straight on into moving up the sort of the body of the bag. So I've kind of done 3 squares up. I've only made them 1 row high each just because I think I liked the sort of smaller scale of the check a little bit better. It's not coming out exactly how I planned. It's also a lot bigger than I thought, so I might have to adjust that as well. But now what I think I'm going to do is narrow down the top of it. My original plan was to have it just sort of very straight sides and then with like a drawstring at the top, but I think this is too thick to be able to do that properly. So I'm going to, they're 4 stitches across, and so what I'm going to do is double crochet 2 together and double crochet to reduce them down to 3 across. And yeah, then narrow it off over sort of 3 more rows and just sort of see where we're at with it. Worst case scenario, I'm just going to stuff it and it's going to look like a bag but actually be a cushion because decor. We'll pretend that we're quirky. I guess who's really pretending? So I kept working around until it was 6 rows tall. Then I finished with a row of single crochet in the navy. Looking at it, it was definitely going to be too thick to put any kind of drawstring in. So I pivoted and I stitched up a flap for the top instead. The flap was itself quite thick, and it felt like I kept having to make it bigger and bigger to make sure that it could fold across the top properly. I could have stitched it straight to the back of the bag, but I wanted it to hinge, so I knew I would have to sew it somehow. Then I looked inside the bag and I had to face the unavoidable truth that the bag needed to be lined. I rummaged through my sewing box and I found this gold shiny drawstring bag that had come with some clothes I had bought a while ago. I'd put it in there thinking that I might use it to make a cap to sleep in, the curly girls will get it. But looking at it, it was just too perfect for this project. It was a great colour to go with the navy and it even fit the recycled fabric theme. Making an effort to preserve the drawstring at the top and at least one of the side seams, I cut a big swoop in the bag roughly the size of my bucket. I then took a needle and thread and painstakingly sewed up the open edge to close it back off again. Please do not judge my sewing too harshly, it has been a really long time since I've had to deal with thread. I then tucked the lining we'd just sewn back inside the bucket. And it was definitely way too big, but I wasn't going to let that slow me down. I stitched it around the rim to secure it in place. With that done, I used some stitch markers to test the positioning of the flap closure. You could slightly tell where the ends of my rows were, so I made sure to position that at the back of the bag. I was relieved to find that the flap was in fact going to be long enough. I used my favourite 3.5mm hook to weave a strand of the navy t-shirt yarn through the outside loops of the bag and the lid. I used those loops as it would best allow the top to hinge nicely. Finally, it came time to make the strap. I experimented with a couple of different knots and weaves before settling on a macrame technique I learned from Google in the middle of filming this, called the French sinnet. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I used a bobby pin to help thread the ends of the string through the sides of the bag, and threaded a strand of the grey and a strand of the navy through to the midpoint. After struggling on the desk, I ended up using the curtain rod hook with better results. At this point, the tripod decided it was the director, so please forgive the artful pans as my camera very slowly fell over more than once. The strap did come out a little bit stretchy, so I stopped it slightly shorter than I wanted it, knowing that the weight of the bag would take it the rest of the way. I had built it off one side of the bag, so all I had to do was tie it to the other side and it was done. So there is my finished bag. I don't really have, taste, but I like it. It kind of ended up a hybrid of a couple of the ideas I started with, but I'm definitely going to be able to use it. And more than that, it's such a relief to have finally used the yarn that I bought so long ago. Anyway, I hope you had fun, and I'll see you next week. Okay, bye!